welcome to the session today. I think the learning outcomes that we are looking at covering today will basically focus on, understanding how is performance measured within the organization. What are the issues which come across when we look at performance management? And the last bit would be to look at how a lot of put reward mechanisms in place in order for their employees to be motivated. So one of the key things that we look at in any organization, if I'm just going to pick out a random organization like, for example, a retailer like Tesco, here most managers are predominantly tasked with ensuring two things. When the recruitment and selection is done and the human resource planning has been done, all department managers, all stores here which are run, the grocery stores in particular, they have a large number of employees. So the managers have a key role and a challenge on a day-to-day basis is to understand how they are going to maintain the performance of the employees, how they are going to keep essentially the employees productive, to keep them completing the jobs which are required to run the business in the store. So from that aspect, if you have that basic understanding that today we are looking at understanding how employees work within an organization and the role of the manager to be able to keep them motivated, interested enough to be able to perform their role or roles and responsibilities on a day in, day out basis. So there are lots of problems and lots of issues which managers or line managers, whatever we call them, they are entrusted with, and these issues that they face on a daily basis have to be solved to keep employees motivated and get the work done. So a simple example would be, if I have just to kind of share my screen for a second, and if I look at a simple example, that if your manager is to give you, two important tasks. That one, make sure that you greet all the customers coming into the store, and the second is how do we ensure that once the customer is in, they are able to then buy relevant items and you get the business or you get them to spend money in the store. Now, because of these two things which have been given by the manager to kind of look at, doing on a daily basis to a certain set of employees, they need to make sure that all the relevant tools and techniques are available for the employees to be able to function. That means they should be able to have things when you sometimes go into the store and see there are balloons and there are chocolates and other things which are there. So sometimes when customers walk into the shop, what you will see is that the sales representative or the person at the store will actually go and hand over a balloon to the child. The idea is he wants to keep them engaged so that the parents have enough time to be able to do shopping. So when we look at measuring performance and when we look at how good the task was done, a lot of managers have to come up with techniques through which they can reward employees and keep those employees motivated enough to be able to kind of do that function in their job on a day in, day out basis. So what we want to be able to do now is just have a quick look at, say, one video which is an issue employers actually face when you're looking at as an employee. So give me one second, let me share the screen again. So what I want to do is, with that understanding and basic background, what we want to be able to do is look at a video when we look at an organization and what frustrates the managers and how they will then put some sort of a reward or a mechanism behind it to try and get the employee to say, come on time. Okay, let's start off with this particular small video which I want you to look at.
Dealing with attendance issues can be frustrating. It seems as though we shouldn't have to deal with them. Really, how hard can it be to read a clock and show up on time? Of course, as mundane as these issues seem, they contain traps. They easily can be the start of bad employee relationships. Even if employees end up obeying the rules and please us, uninspired behavior, they're just being compliant. They go through the motions just enough not to lose their jobs. As severe as these traps are, though, attendance issues also offer great opportunities.
So let's look at another one, and that was the basic, say, a problem. And let's look at how reward management can change some of this issue.
getting the right people on board. But once they're on board, we need to manage them well. Part of that is performance management. Performance management scares people, but really it's just a simple system for allowing people to set goals and tracking their performance against those goals and then rewarding them. It really should be simple, because as soon as it becomes complicated or convoluted, people start to just either opt out by ignoring it or just ticking the boxes and going through the motions. Good performance management should be based around 4 R's. That should be results, revelation, regularity, relationship, and reward. The first thing is results. Performance management should be about encouraging people and helping people to set goals and achieve results that are tied in with the strategy of the organisation. We don't want people just doing stuff for the sake of it. We don't want them being really productive in an area that's got nothing to do with where we're going. We want them to be setting goals and achieving results in line with where the organisation is heading. The second part is revelation. That is, performance management should reveal both strengths and success and weaknesses in areas where performance is not doing so well. It should really show up where there is a need for more resources, a need for training, or a need for discipline. So performance management should be about results and also about revelation. Third point about performance management is that it should be regular. The idea of an annual review is a fairly outdated one. Successful organisations and managers often have a system of performance management which is fortnightly or weekly. The benefit of that is that when things start to go off track, you can spot that early on and deal with it. And when things are going well, you can spot that early on and encourage it. If it's not regular, it's easy for people to drift and start doing things that might be really productive but have nothing to do with their goals and the strategy of the organisation. Or it's easy for people to be doing the right things but become discouraged. So performance management, it should be about results, should be revealing where the strengths and weaknesses are, it should be regular, and it should also be relational. That is, it shouldn't be based around some kind of technical computer system where you type in your results and get a little tick. It should be a conversation with the manager. And that's going to require some emotional intelligence from managers. Because inevitably, one of the things you might need to deal with in performance management is poor performance. So you need to have the ability to confront that honestly, bring it out and talk about it without crushing the person's spirits. It needs to be part of a general relationship, part of a conversation that's ongoing and regular. Lastly, performance management needs to be about rewards. That is, you need to reward right behaviour. Reward people who are achieving their goals, their results that are tied to the strategy of the organisation. People notice what gets rewarded. People do what gets rewarded. So if you have rewards over here, whether they're financial or they're just affirmation from a manager, whatever it is, and you're rewarding these behaviours, but your performance management is pointing people in this direction, people are going to do this because this is what's being rewarded. To be truly effective, whatever is being set here as a goal, that needs to be rewarded. That's when people will start to notice. That's when people will start to change their behaviour, because you're rewarding them for results. And that's when you'll start to get some real business success, because those results are tied to the organisation's strategy. Interestingly, performance management will work both ways. It will enable the organisation and the manager to see how the individual's going and to manage that performance. It will kind of reveal that. But it will also help the individual see how the organisation is going. That is, if the individual's constantly being asked to do too much with too little resources without being trained appropriately, performance management is actually going to bring that out and may actually lead to that individual becoming disillusioned with the organisation. So it needs to be in the context of good management in every area, because not only will it show up individual weaknesses, it will show up organisational weaknesses.
Right, okay. So if I just minimize this now, let's some basic concepts that we've gone through. Now, in this learning,
tuning in to Easy Small Business HR employee hiring.
My mistake. So let's look at some of the essential concepts that we are going to cover today. Now, one of the key things, if I go on to the PowerPoint slide now, would be to understand how different rewards strategies are put in place by HR managers. Now, a simple example that would be that if an employee is coming late time again to the organization, is late for work, what the managers would do is they know that the person coming in late is trying his best to come on time, but it is always a reason or an issue which kind of delays and then kind of delays him to come on time as far as the work is concerned. But the employee generally has what you call is, in good faith, the employee is generally trying to come on time. Now, if this becomes a habit, what the managers would tend to do is they would look at some sort of strategies which are to be put in place, which will either reward the employees which are coming in on time, or they would then move the goalpost to ensure that all of them are able to come on time or are able to, be in the office during certain working hours for them to be able to be productive. Now, here, what tends to happen is, considering some of these, issues which managers face on a day in, day out basis within the organization, HR as a subject has come up with, something called reward management strategies. Now, we understand, when you look at kids, sometimes you will see, or when you look at your pets, sometimes you will see that you try and reward your pet, or, if they're not doing something, you'll probably reward them by giving some sort of a, you'll primarily ask them to, let's put it this way. If you have a dog and the dog is not doing the things that you want him to do, what you'll do is you'll put some sort of a reward in place, maybe a biscuit or something like that, and that would kind of make him respond to what you want him to do. Similarly, within organizations, when we look at, there are reward strategies which are put in place in order for employees to be productive, or in order for them to kind of align with what you call are the business goals for the organization. So when we look at this, let's look at going through some of the slides to understand why these are required. Now, rewards are obvious concern to both employers and employees, because if you're giving incentives, bonuses, perks to employees, and you're not getting the achievement of the goals and objectives happening in return, then they can become a bit of a concern for employers, and also to a certain extent for employees, because they then see it as an aspect that, because I'm not able to fulfill the goals, this is something which can be withdrawn or taken away from me. A simple example that I would give here is when you look at organizations like Google and Facebook and Microsoft, they have lots of different types of things available in the office, like free lunches and nice showers. Like most offices today in developed countries provide some of these facilities to employees, because they would want to come and say, for example, bike and come into the office in order for the environment to be protected, things like that, and whatever reasons they are. But an availability of a shower within the office is kind of a reward which the employer has put in place when there is no requirement. So, if you are staying late, you can go into a gym and obviously work and then take a shower and go back home. Now, there is a reward, and this reward is put in place by the employers, because they do recognize that some employees work late in the organization, and as an incentive, this is something which is provided. Now, it can become a concern is that a lot of employees start coming in, you start using the gym, but they are spending the working hours which are required to be working in the office by putting that in the gym. The second thing that we see is the current modern form of HR that we are seeing right now is going into a lot of different departments. So HR is not just restricted to managing human resources, or let's put it this way, the traditional 5 functions that we saw, things like staffing, recruitment, selection, training, development, and compliance with legislation. But it is going into a lot of other areas, which is to make the workforce more productive, to make the workforce more efficient. Because our jobs are not changing, what is happening is, in order to keep the same workforce more interested in the same role, the HR has to now provide what you call rewards or mechanisms have to be put in place to provide rewards to the employees so that they are interested and they continue to do their job roles. So what has happened over the years is there is something called performance-related pay has been put into place. And the other thing that we will look at studying would be something called performance management. Now, because there are lots of things which companies are putting in as perks, incentives, and let's put it this way, deliverables for the employees within the organization, there is something called performance management which has been started now. In the olden days, performance management, as it was shown in the video, was that normally appraisals were done once a year. You give the job description, the employee starts working, and you evaluate the performance of the employee at the end of the year. But now, performance management is a continuous process, and this process, when we say is continuous, by the word continuous, I mean that it happens at weekly level, monthly level, quarterly level, and also at the yearly level. This performance can also be peer managed. That means sometimes HR will look at evaluating your working in the organization and take feedback from your peers. That means somebody who is a colleague of yours in the organization. So, for example, when we look at a college, you'll have a principal who takes feedback from teachers and different types of teachers, but he takes feedback about one teacher from the other or one department from the other. So performance management is becoming a continuous process, and in some cases, this is now being related to what we call performance related to pay. If you deliver more, you earn more. If you overachieve the aims and objectives or goals and objectives set, you get more reward, or you get more benefit in terms of incentive. Now, what we do see is the pay systems. Over the years, what has happened is, if you look at maybe 3-4 decades back, there used to be a normal pay, or a pay which was given to the employee primarily for coming in and doing the office work. But now pay has expanded to include something called perks, incentives, bonus, additional deliverables which are given. And a simple example of that would be that if you work within a sales role, sometimes employers would give you annual train pass. That means if you have to travel quite a lot, they will give you a train pass, or in some cases, some employers will also authorize the use of a car. So what they will do is they'll give you a company car. Now, because that is a direct benefit which is going to the employee, you will use that car obviously for official purposes, but because you have it as a perk given to you by the employer, what will that mean is that during off duty, that same perk could also be used for personal and professional usage. So here, the pay systems over the years have changed because some of these things have come in the modern form of HR. When I look at post-2000, wherein management will normally seek to pay you a basic pay, but on top of the basic pay, you will have, say, for example, bonus or incentive. And then in order for you, depending on how senior you are in the organization, sometimes you will get additional perks which are commensurate to your role. That means the chief executive might have access to a car, may have an access to a PA or a personal assistant, but that might not be available to somebody who's a marketing manager in the company or a sales manager in the company, because this is a perk or an incentive which is given at that level when you're senior enough in the organization and your roles and responsibilities are quite high. So sometimes you will see that this has, this is an evolution that we see in the pay systems happening over the years. Now, you must have seen an issue which also gets raised in the news, that women get less pay as compared to men in the same position. Now, this is gender-based pay, and sometimes, over the years, this has not been spoken about, but now, in the modern times, there is a fairness which is coming into the pay system, which means that, both the people working in the same role, and if they're doing the same functions and responsibilities, need to be given the same amount of pay. Now, in order for this to be in place, there are rules and legislation which has been introduced, at least in the European Union and in the UK, wherein people working in the same role, same type of role, or within the same department need to have the same type of pay, and that is covered under something called the fairness of pay. Now, quickly going through one or two things before we go to the second concept, and I'll explain that in a bit more detail with the subsequent slides. What we do see that what is happening is there are lots of different types of payment systems being put in place. If I look at about 2-3 decades back, when people were working in the industrialization or industrialized states, predominantly in factories and production facilities, work was primarily on a shift basis. So you were working in a particular shift and you were getting paid hourly, and in that case the concept of hourly wage and weekly wage came into being. So performance related wage meant at that point in time that if you were doing overtime beyond the time that you were allowed to work in the shift, you were getting paid 1.5 times or some 1 plus X times higher than because you were spending extra time. So the payment systems or pay systems over the years have also kind of changed in HR, wherein today what we talk about is a salary and not a wage. But in olden days, we used to talk about wages because you were working primarily on an hourly basis, or you were working primarily on a weekly basis or shift basis. So what we've seen over the years is that these concepts and the evolving concept of performance and reward management over the years has taken two forms. One is payment by results, and the other is payment. If you perform more, you get more payments, or you get more contribution in terms of your incentives or bonus, and that is the variable component which is being included in the pay. So you get a fixed pay, which is your fixed pay when you do the particular role, and there is a variable component of that pay which is included, which means if you are able to achieve the goals and objectives, then the incentive component of that actually kicks in, and that is where you, if you're able to overachieve the targets, you are essentially taking home more pay or wage on a take home on a monthly basis. Now, there are some surveys which have been done from time to time. One of the good websites to look at if you want to look at comparison on how rewards and performance and incentives are set by various organizations, there is a good website that you can look into, and this is something that you should be aware of when you look at, and this website is called Glassdoor. So here you can look at places that you work in, and you can look at a company, and when you look at that company, you can look at what are the pay scales that particular company actually provides. So you go on to salaries, and these are tools and techniques which the HR manager is able to use, because when you are hiring new employees within the organization, you need to know what your competitors are paying and what is the benchmark in terms of wage or salary for that particular, let's put it this in Manchester, UK, that particular role within a company in that city. So let's look at the digital marketing manager. So what we want to look at is, as an HR manager, what I want to do is I want to send out a vacancy in the market, or put out an advert for a vacancy of digital marketing manager. And here what I want to do is basically look at what are the pay scales which companies in the Northwest, in Manchester, are paying for that particular role. So you can look at by going into one of them, and this gives HR managers an idea in terms of how they can put the pay package and the pay systems in place to say, okay, if I look at 1 to 3 years of experience within the area, say search, and some of these services obviously are paid, but they can give you a clear idea in terms of how the salaries and pay structures would be in the case of a particular role. And then it helps the HR managers to define reward management strategy, or the reward structure for a particular role within the organization. Now, let's look at one other thing which I want to discuss would be, how do HR managers actually look at, appraisals? What are the different techniques through which you can do appraisals or, monitor employee performance? Any idea on this in terms of how do you think in organizations employees are monitored? First of all, yeah, go ahead.
Noting their performance.
Yes. Okay, let me ask you a basic question. Why do you think monitoring of employees is necessary within the organization?
For the better development of the organization.
Okay, that is one point here. Okay.
Like what how else? They are performing, like are they giving the organization benefit? Like obviously if they are employees there, so they need to, or they are working for the betterment of the organization.
Yes, that's correct. So here what we look at is when we look at, say, the process of employee monitoring, one of the key things that we look at when you look at monitoring employees, or you look at looking at what was given and what was achieved. The reason why you want to look at monitoring employees is that you want to kind of be able to manage the output of the employee, which the employee is providing on a daily or weekly basis. So the concept, something which is called performance management. That means one is you have given the employees a job description, and once you've given the employee a job description, you are looking at evaluating whether the employee is able to perform those duties, is able to perform those responsibilities, and is able to perform those responsibilities to a suitable say level, so that the goals and objectives at the end of the day are met. So when we look at monitoring of employees, there are clear 4 or 5 reasons why we look at monitoring of employees. And one is you could monitor employees primarily to look at their work and their output. Second could be you could look at monitoring the employees to understand if they need training and development, because sometimes monitoring can help uncover gap areas wherein you will recognize that, okay, this work which has been given might not be, the employee who's working on it might not have the full experience to work on it. So in this case, the employee needs training and development. Sometimes you monitor the employees because you want to be able to see if the work given is something which is sufficient enough or is too much work for one employee to handle. So sometimes you will break them up into teams, and this will also help you to basically look at, understanding if the work which they are doing is sufficient and robust enough for them to be able to accomplish. And the other thing that we look at is, overarching thing that we look at is, sometimes you have to look at monitoring of employees because you want to track their activities and understand what engagement or how detailed an engagement they are doing in the workplace to be able to achieve tasks. Correct? So if you don't know what your subordinates are doing, how will a manager review the progress? So monitoring has to be done to ensure that every employee in the business is actually able to be productive, has the ability to be able to deliver on tasks, and also it has the ability to be able to complete the activities given to meet the goals and objectives. So monitoring is necessary. Now, how monitoring is done? One of the keys that you look at monitoring would start from a job description. Now, in the learning outcome 2, what we looked at was the process of human resource planning. It goes through identifying what resources are required, and say in terms, when I say resources, means how much people are required to be able to accomplish an increase in turnover by, say, 150%. Now that strategy, when it is put into place, they need to look at how many people have to be recruited in that role to be able to achieve that target. Now once that is done, the job description, recruitment selection process starts, and when you recruit somebody, you put somebody into that job. At that stage, what you do is you give them what is called a job description, and that job description is a suitable measure of the activities which the employee is entrusted to complete within that role. Now, once that job description has been done, at some stage, the monitoring part of it is to look at evaluating whether the person has been able to complete and meet those activities. So the purpose of monitoring is to look at also evaluation in terms of understanding how good the job or how good the person is able to perform in the in the role which has been given.
Okay.
So sometimes you will look at this process wherein employee monitoring becomes important because you need to be able to evaluate how the person is performing in that role. So from a company standpoint of view, what tends to happen is a lot of companies use a lot of tools to be able to monitor staff performance. Sometimes you will see in organizations, a lot of organizations, in order to monitor and make the process of monitoring effective, put softwares in or IT tools in. That means you have a CRM software that you've heard of, say customer relationship management, a Salesforce software, which is salesforce.com. So for example, what they want is the employees to be able to document their activities and then see that, okay, they are able to meet some milestones. You will see in some organizations, they have something called the project management softwares, because when they work in a big project or a big task or a big activity, they divide those activities into smaller activities, and those activities are then aligned to individual employees. And the idea of using software is to basically ensure that once the task is completed, the person is able to document and complete that task in the software, and that helps the managers review whether the job has been correctly done or has not been, or has been incomplete or has been completed. So that is why when we look at the process of monitoring employees, what we look at is monitoring is important because it helps managers to clearly understand and differentiate who's performing and who's not performing. And that monitoring basically is required from a standpoint of view of ensuring, because the manager is responsible for, at the end of the day, achieving the aims and objectives. Now, in this, what we also look at is, when you look at monitoring of employees, managers will also look at monitoring the motivation level of employees to be able to do the job. See, when we say human resources, we discuss the process and approach of hard approach and soft approach, hard HRM and soft HRM. When you have jobs which are repetitive, so for example, when you look at a call center example, and in the call center, the employees make a lot of phone calls, and their aim is to go through a number of calls, maybe say 200 or 150, 200 calls a day. So when you look at that mechanism, here the HR manager uses a soft approach in order to ensure that he also keeps track of the motivation and the morale of the employee, because doing the same set of calls, going through the same script again, becomes monotonous. So here the HR manager is more concerned about the well-being of the employee, and using the soft approach, they look at keeping a track of the motivation of the person. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, sometimes you will see, these are all aspects of, how do we look at monitoring employee performance. So one is, we are looking at job evaluation. When we look at job evaluation, there are lots of various types of things which can be put in for different set of employees. So somebody who's making the calls, you're looking at monitoring, obviously, the number of calls being made, the response being given. But if you come to the manager who's taking the decisions, who's putting, certain type of employees on certain important tasks, because of the knowledge and skills they have, they are differentiating on the basis of prior experience and also ensuring, kind of a success factor. And they weigh a lot of things to ensure that if I give this job to this person will be able to do the job. And there the monitoring required, or hand-holding required, supervision required, different words in different situations might not be required, and that would make the job of the manager easier. Now, you will also see when sometimes monitoring of employees is done, they also look at, I think what we call as taking employee opinion. That means in some cases what they will look at is, they will look at doing appraisals, but once appraisals are done, they then look at taking feedback from their employees to see if they are, let's put it this way, if they are happy in their role, do they have the basic things to be able to perform that role effectively. And in some cases, they will also ask about if they are happy doing that job, and if they need any help or additional resources, to be able to kind of do that job well. So when we look at monitoring has different aspects, and monitoring of employees typically looks at, motivation, it looks at their opinion, it also looks at measuring performance, and in some cases when you measure performance, you look annual appraisals, and these annual appraisals then link into something called, when I say annual appraisals, employee appraisals, and they link into something called performance of the employees. So in order to ensure that monitoring is done and that monitoring is effective, this as a process is done primarily to look at management of the performance of employees. A simple example is when we look at a task given by a manager saying that can you call these 2 customers and get some feedback, why they have complained and things like that. So at the end of the day, the manager will ask the person again to which the job has been given that were you able to call these customers? What's the feedback? Why they had complained? Now, if you're not able to get hold of the customers and you're not able to speak to them, get this feedback, then at the end of the day, that task has not been accomplished and it goes on to the next day. So in order to ensure that the work is done and is done on time, monitoring is important, and that monitoring to a later stage leads to something called performance management. And if you're doing these tasks on a day in, day out basis and you're doing them well, then in those cases, what will happen is when the performance appraisals are done or the management of your, when the managers look back at your activities given and the work completed, they put you in the good books because what they see is that you're able to get them results because you have a good understanding of what the objectives are, what the priorities are, and then you're able to work on those objectives to be able to meet them to the organizational standard. So performance management is something which is then, at some stage, most organizations link it to your pay or link it to your incentive or your bonus or bonuses. So if you are able to consistently perform, deliver on results, what they then tend to do is that they tend to basically look at, giving you additional incentives which allow you to deliver more work, take on more responsibility, but at the same time, they are able to keep you motivated because the more you do, the more you take in terms of responsibility, the more incentive or salary or wages you get on a monthly basis. Is that okay? Yeah? Yeah. Now, when we look at performance management, let's understand one other small thing. What is a contract? When you apply for a job role and you're able to get that job, and you're selected, you do the interview, you're selected, you get a contract, you get the appointment letter, and then you're asked to sign a contract. What do you think is a contract? Why do you think the organization asks you to sign a contract?
Like it's the term and the conditions, like they tell you about your responsibilities in that contract.
That is correct. So one aspect that you've covered is, their roles and responsibilities and what they expect from you to be able to do in that job role. What else can you think of is there in the contract? Terms and conditions you have said, which is a very good point. You've said roles and responsibilities, which is a good point. What else do you think is involved in the contract, and why do you think the contract is a must?
They also mentioned salary in the contract.
Absolutely. So they mention what is called your salary, your incentives, your pay and perk. The reason why they ask you to sign a contract is they say, okay, this is your role and responsibility, this is what you deliver, and this is what is a reward you will get if you consistently perform on the roles and responsibilities given. So a job description which turns into something called, at some stage into a contract, and that contract then gives you some rewards and incentives, which then basically mean you get this bonus, you get this much percentage of, stocks, or you get annual, dental insurance free, medical benefits, your leave and vacation with your family, 28 days leave or 23 days leave, whatever it is, depending on the country. These are all given in the part of the contract. Now, this contract is nothing but an agreement between the employee and the organization saying that if you deliver this, the organization will also deliver on the contract or the agreement which is doing to keep you motivated and keep you, deliver on the things that it promises to you in terms of deliverables, which are your basic salary, your variable salary, your incentives, your perks, and other emoluments that you get along with that particular role. So a contract is nothing but, a document which basically looks at, determining your pay against your performance, because there could be an incentive structure which is given, and that incentive structure would, if you are joining in sales, if you achieve 100% of your targets, you get say 25% additional pay. If you achieve 150% of your targets for 3 months, you get 35% additional pay, or things like that. And that tends to be something called factors which are related to variable part of your pay and package, but it is dependent and directly related to what is called the performance in the organization. Is that okay?
Yes.
Is that clear?
Yes.
Daniel, I know you have a, I think it's a bit of a mic issue today, so I just want to understand if you are able to, understand this, and maybe a, yes or no in terms of a chat would definitely be helpful. Okay, he understood partly. Any questions? Let me ask you. Any questions at your end, Manu?
No, I understood.
Okay, good. So let's look at one of the couple of things which I think OTHM has modeled into the learning outcome 3, which I want to look at. Now I'm going to send you a bit of a handout. Like I've given some examples here. For example, a lot of offices today have cafeteria, canteens, free lunches, gym, and other facilities. Now these are facilities provided within the organization because they want their employees to be motivated. They want their employees to be, loyal towards the organization. And these are soft perks or incentives which the organizations nowadays provide in order to keep the motivation and morale of these high when working in the organization. Sometimes you will see that some organizations also give a 5-year reward, a 10-year reward like a watch, or a 15-year reward, which is, a certificate in a watch, or something of that memorabilia to employees when they have worked in the organization. Have you heard about that?
Yes. For schools, it's for 10 years.
Yeah, so this is something which is, a part of, it is not really a part of reward management, but this is a part of, keeping the employee motivated and as a goodwill gesture saying that, okay, we are thank you for the services that you've provided, and, we care as an organization for the contributions you make towards the business. So this is where, sometimes you will see that some side of rewards which are seen within the organization are from a point of view of, more towards loyalty and motivation than primarily directly related to, your pay scale or your package. Okay. Now let's look at one or two small other things which I think have been mentioned, in terms of the, I'm going to primarily pick that up in terms of, work time legislation, and then something which is called the European Directive, which basically means that, all employees within the UK have to kind of look at, working 37.5 hours, and that is considered full-time. Anything less than 25 hours is actually considered part-time. So those are things which they have included, and I'm just quickly opening up one or two, websites to try and basically cover those points up. Now, when you work within an organization, the main point that I'm going to try and cover here by showing you some of the things is, as a part of the employer, when you work for an employer in an organization, what happens is, as a part and parcel of things which the employers need to provide, they need to provide something called a safe working place. Okay. Now there are some laws. Say for example, equality. Equality. We look at discrimination. We look at work time directive, and we look at say for example. So discrimination, work time, and we look at, say, for example, health and safety. Right? Now, because we are talking about human resources management, one of the key areas that we looked at was that under the 5 functions, legislation and compliance with legislation is also a key area which HR managers have to look into. Now, when you work within an organization, you expect that when you work within a company or a business, you expect certain basic things to be made available to you as a part and parcel of your working within the company. So one small thing could be that you work within a premises which is safe, clean, and fit for purpose. Right? Sometimes you will see that the factory, factory workers, not factory workers, when you look at large production sites or manufacturing facilities, you normally see there are a lot of inspections which happen within those factory sites, is because under compliance, these factory sites have to have certain basic security parameters. Things like that should be a safe and a clean working environment. There should be adequate, exits in the event of an incident or a fire. Then, these are things which are mandated by the law or by legislation, that the workplace should be safe and secure. So one of the key legislation, which HR has to look into is health and safety. That means the place where workers work, they have to provide a place where the workers or staff feel safe and secure, right? And this is covered under the Health and Safety Act of 1974, as we call HASWA 1974 in the UK. And this act basically says that every workplace, it is the duty of the employer, that means the person which employs you, to provide a place wherein they are able to ensure there is safety and welfare at work. And this particular act is a legislation which has to be complied with all organizations in the UK. And this particular law is a legislation which HR has to follow. So we need to be aware of these legislation. The second one is equality and diversity. That means when you employ people within the organization, you cannot discriminate. When you employ people within the organization, you cannot discriminate against or using race, caste, religion, color, those kind of things. So this is a second legislation which all employers have to comply with, and this is covered under the Equality and Diversity Act of, I think, 1981, if I just look at it. So this has been revised over the years, and this is covered under the Equality and Diversity Act of 2010. So this is the second legislation that we need to look at. The third legislation that we look at is something called the Work Time Directive, and this was introduced, by the European Union, wherein what they said is that all workers working within the organization as permanent employees will need to be given 28 days or 5.6 weeks of paid holiday. And this is the Working Directives, Act that we need to look at. And this was introduced in 1998 and later revised to EU, with the context of European Union. It is called the European Time Directive. So this is the third thing that you need to be aware of. Is that okay?
Yes.
So there are some laws and legislation that we need to look at as HR managers, and those are bits that we need to be able to cover and understand when we look at the number of hours which an employee can work within an organization. So the hours which are defined as full-time, full-time in the UK is 37.5 hours per week. And that is considered full-time. Anything less than 25 hours or anything I'll say anything less than 16 hours is considered part-time work. And this is basically defined in the Working Times Regulation or Directive of 1998. Is that okay?
Yes.
Any questions on this? I'll send you a bit of a handout on this. There are 4 or 5 legislations that we have to cover, and we need to understand that they are to be included in the employer's contract or the employee contract when you employ somebody within the organization. So those are things that I think they have mentioned something in terms of the learning outcome 3 in terms of performance management, reward strategies, and how pay and reward strategies are put in place by various employers, including a job contract, including a job specification, and the job evaluation process. Is that okay?
Yes.
So this will help us cover learning outcome 3. What we need to do is, if I summarize this, I think in learning outcome 3, what we are looking at doing is understanding how employees are rewarded within the organization, what are the performance measures, and then in order to study one performance measure, which I'm going to look at, let's put it this way, send you a bit of handout on, and that performance evaluation measure would be something called balance scorecard. This is one of the tools which a lot of managers today, modern day managers in HR, line managers, or managers essentially use to measure productivity and performance of the employee. The other methods that we are aware of is performance appraisals, which are done. There is something called 360-degree feedback, which is another form of appraisal which is done in some organizations. That means if you are working within a company, the line manager or your functional manager will look at doing your appraisal to see how you're performing, but they will also take feedback from your peers, from your colleagues, from your juniors, and also from the senior management, and that sort of feedback, which is collected from each and every department or each and every level of the organization in your appraisal, is called 360-degree feedback. Okay, so there will be a bit of a handout which I will send along with these presentation slides to try and grasp the concept, the theoretical concepts, to understand what is performance management, what is reward management, how it is related to pay, and then we need to study at least one type of method that we need to understand, which is, say, the balance scorecard. And that, I will send you a bit of a handout so that you are able to understand how this is used within the organization to primarily look at, say, for example, manage employees and, manage their performance. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So this handout is what I'm going to send. And there is another thing which I will include, which is called management by objectives. Now, this is not directly related to performance management and reward management, but management by objectives is a terminology which has been created over the years, wherein the organizational vision and organizational mission is translated into aims and objectives at management level, from management level to the mid-management and lower management level. And here, the managers actually govern. And when I say govern, they basically measure the performance of the employees in terms of how much contribution they are making towards the achievement of that objective set by the management. So this is called management by objective. This is a term that we will also use at a later stage in this particular unit. And the idea would be, when you study MBO and balance scorecard, it will kind of go hand in hand, because sometimes you will see managers set up objectives, yearly objectives, monthly objectives, or quarterly objectives, and they measure the performance of the employees in relation to the objectives set by the management. So, example, to explain this by example, rather than use the word again and again, example would be that as an employee, if I'm working within a car manufacturing factory, you will see that the car assembly has lots of different types of departments. So the assembly of the chassis happens in one department. Now their objective is, which has been set on the floor level, would be that, okay, we manufacture, say, we have to deliver about 200 chassis every day to the production floor to be assembled into cars. Now, if they are delivering 200 every day, then that means they're achieving the objective set by the management of sending 200 chassis. Now, how they are sent, how much are processed, it could be that there's a 3 shifts which are operating. Each shift actually sends, say, just for calculation, say 240, so 80, 80, and 80. 3 shifts, 24 hours, 8 hours each shift actually sends 80 chassis. Now, when they come across to the production floor, the assembly of the car starts. There's one team which integrates the engine, the second team integrates the tires, the third team integrates the upholstery, in the interiors of the car, and the fourth team actually then does what you call testing, and the fifth team actually delivers it out to the say for example the factory floor. Now, because if all of these are working in line, what is happening is the objective is they have to deliver 240 cars in terms of production every day. But if it gets held up somewhere, if there's a problem in terms of service, quality, or a fault or failure, then what will happen is on that day, that many number of cars will not be assembled or achieved in terms of delivery. So here, the governance at the factory floor by the floor manager is done on the basis of number of cars being delivered, and if it is meeting the objectives of the management set or the guideline set. So in those cases, management by objective is done, and when they look at management by objectives, they use a technique called balanced scorecard to be able to measure performance of employees to see where in operations like these they try and reduce seconds from the operation line to speed up the process. So they will see that, okay, if somebody is installing, for example, tires into the car, and that takes manually to fit tires about 5 minutes, and if it is to be motorized or mechanized as a process by the use of robots or aids, then this could be done in 30 seconds or 60 seconds, and that would mean the manager at the floor will be able to save 4 minutes in terms of assembly of the car, because 5 minutes will reduce to 4, and the tires are installed in 60 seconds. And these 4 minutes can be allocated somewhere else in the factory floor to look at finishing the tasks on the car assembly line. So those kind of things are measured very carefully using something called balanced scorecard, and it helps achieve objectives within the organization of what they want to look at by taking an example of a car manufacturing. Is that okay?
Yes.
So these concepts is what we need to understand when we look at overview wise for this particular learning outcome. And what I'm going to do is after this session send you a bit of a handout on balanced scorecard and MBO, and along with that the slides of this presentation, which I'll also upload onto Moodle. Any questions, any queries, please send me an email, or we'll pick this up into the next session.
Yeah, sir, I've sent you an email. If you can reply to that. Yesterday.
I can do that, yes. I can understand, and I will do that. So I think what we will do in that case, there are some sessions which I'm going to, let's complete the first unit as we've been doing, and then for some sessions, what I'm going to do is put some delays so that they are being staggered across, a couple of weeks. So I'm going to cancel a few sessions and then realign once we, start back again after the holy month of Ramadan.
Okay. And what about the assignment? Like, what are the dates for submitting the assignment?
What you will see is, I think on Moodle, just let me have a quick look right now. If you try and submit an assignment, there are something called the assignment submission deadlines. But if they are not there, then I will send them across to you on the email. Give me 1 second. See, as a benchmark, what we do is once we are delivering the unit and the unit is complete, we are looking at the assignment being completed within 2 weeks of the delivery of unit. Okay, so if you finish the HRM unit, say on 24th of May, you have time till 7th of June to submit the assignment or a working draft of the assignment. And then we will give you some feedback on that, and once we have given you the feedback, you can finalize it and then you can submit it to us. So generally, it is, as a benchmark, we recommend 2 weeks from the date of completion of the unit.
Okay. And sir, one more thing I wanted to ask. In the assignment, where it's written, it said that there is also an appendix 8.1 where we can see the an example of the assignment, but I couldn't find. Like, I want to see an example of how the assignment is actually done.
Okay, so what I can do is, for that, I can send you a sample for you. I will send you a sample, and that sample you can look at from a point of view of following it through for all assignments. I'll send you a few tasks from an actual portfolio, and that will help you to see how the assignment is put together.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, no worries. So, Daniel, I believe you've sorted your mic out. Can you hear me, Daniel? Yes. Okay, that's fine. I will send you a sample as well. That's Daniel. I will send them a sample. No worries. So, with this, what I'll do is I'll end the session here, and I'll catch up with you in the next one. And I expect to get the handout and and everything on the model in the next couple of minutes. Okay, thank you. Thanks for joining the session. Thank you and take care.
Thank you.
Bye.